So we've talked about elimination, we've touched on control, but what about prevention? We're raising pigs differently today than we did 5 or 10 years ago. We're certainly managing them differently. Are you concerned about any older diseases reemerging in the pork industry?
Well, I think that's always a possibility, and one that comes to our attention occasionally is good old swine dysentery or Brachiospira
Really?
that we see increasingly somewhat in Midwest production systems.
Now, Joe, you and I have both been in the pork industry a long time, and I think I did my first interview with you more than 30 years ago, and I think that might have been on bloody scours, or otherwise known as swine dysentery. I thought that disease went away.
Well, we probably missed the opportunity to eliminate that disease when we had the prevalence really low. Now we see, if we look at our diagnostic prevalence, that it is increasing in a few of the geographical areas. At the same time, we've lost some of our control methods, and so one of the factors as we think about elimination, and Brachiospira swine dysentery being a great example, we want to take that opportunity when prevalence is low to try to eliminate those pathogens, because maybe some of the tools that we have during that time period will not be available to us, and that's a great example, Joe.
Now, the pork industry has done a nice job of reducing the amount of feed antibiotics that they're using in feed, particularly the medically important ones. Do you think, while that's a positive trend from an antimicrobial resistance management standpoint, are we opening up the door for other bacterial pathogens?
If we go down and think through bacterial organisms such as Strep suis and Haemophilus parasuis, we have to move to other control methods, primarily involving vaccines or exposure methods, since we don't use the antimicrobials like we did previously.
Now, we've talked a lot about bacterial pathogens today, but viruses obviously get a lot of attention, particularly for the possibility of them being transmitted through feed. What are you telling your producers these days?
Yeah, one of the things that, Joe, that's come out of the 2013-14 PED introduction was that we can transfer viruses through certain feed ingredients. Continuing on today and thinking about the risk as ASF, we also know from research studies that that virus, as well as the other viruses we'd be concerned about, have survivability in certain ingredients. So what we're telling our producers is, one, continue to fund research, because the best research is being done here within the U.S. pork industry. It's the most current, it's the most practical. Secondly, we have information coming out that would tell us what we can do in the short term to try to reduce the risk of those viruses. So time and storage temperature of those ingredients at high risk, auditing of feed mills, auditing of feed transport biosecurity have all really come to the forefront and are things that we can deal with. And then lastly in that arena has been feed mitigants that'll reduce the concentration, if not fully inactivate the virus, and so viruses of concern. So what we expect will come out over the next time period will be a number of mitigants that are cost effective, and we will also find a practical place within the chain that we would include those ingredients. So for example, that might be at the blender if it is incoming ingredients from outside the country, which would then reduce the need to add them at the final stage of feed manufacturing.